My biggest thing is, one thing is people have to realize this, especially if you're an agent or anything in real estate, this is an influence economy. People are making this. There are places where, hey, a lot of times, hey, I actually need a real estate lawyer in Georgia for a topic right now. Am I shopping that? No, I'm really just going to take the recommendation from my estate planning attorney, and I'll do a quick vet. But anything else in real estate, and even there.
You found the Real Estate Law Podcast, because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. If you're a real estate professional or looking to build real estate expertise, then welcome to the conversation and discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com.
Welcome to the Real Estate Law Podcast. We're here with another excellent episode. And Rory, I decided to wear my best dad shirt because we got a bunch of dads here. I know you got a jacket on, but we have Kurt Uhlir here from Showcase IDX. He's a great internet marketer. He runs Showcase IDX. We're going to learn about IDX websites, some best practices for real estate agents. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship today. And dads, we got to talk about dads. We already talked about Bluey, right, Kurt? I mean, you brought that into the conversation before we record. We do watch Bluey. I saw a beautiful young girl on your Instagram page.
Yes,
Is she a new
my
addition
daughter,
to your
Hannah
website?
Grace.
What's her name? Anna?
Hannah Grace.
Hannah Grace. That's awesome. And you have a second child, right? I
have a 3-year-old son named Judah. So
yeah. Wow. We have a 3-year-old daughter named Cecily, so keeps us all busy. But Rory, you're the one that dressed up for the occasion. Kurt's got a nice shirt on also, but I literally went all dad. I have dad shorts on, dad New Balance shoes on. I just went all dad for this episode.
I am wearing khaki shorts. You can't see them in here, but I have khaki shorts on.
You are? Okay. Hey, Rory, you have a couple websites with IDX on them. I'd love to get, your conversation with Kurt going on it, but can we introduce Kurt first, Rory?
Go right ahead, Jason.
Okay. Kurt runs Showcase IDX. And at first I thought you were just in charge of marketing, but you run the whole shebang. So we're going to have to hear more about Showcase IDX. You've run startups, with revenue over $500 million annually. You are a public speaker. You've spoken to lots of groups around the country. You're a globally recognized marketer. We'd love to hear about some of the work that you've done around the world as well. And, you're well-versed in entrepreneurship. You're coming to us from Georgia, the great state of Georgia. Yeah. That's a big welcome to the podcast. So thank you, Kurt. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Rory Gill from Next Home Titletown Real Estate and Urban Village Legal here in Boston. I know you don't have IDX on your law firm's website, but you certainly have it on Next Home Titletown's websites. And maybe, set the stage and talk about how important IDX is on your websites.
Before we get too far into it, I want to make sure that let everyone know this is not too technical of a podcast. IDX is Internet Data Exchange, and I could be corrected on that, but it's the tool that allows real estate brokerages to have live real estate listings on their websites, even listings of other brokerages pulling from the MLS. But it's a great, really essential marketing tool that we have on our websites that allows customers to see us and come to us first in their home search instead of kind of looking elsewhere and then just coming to us by chance once they're ready to go. So it engages people, it keeps people happy on the buyer side, demonstrates the market to people, but it's really a core piece of our marketing. We wouldn't be able to do half of what we do with email marketing, social media without it.
Kurt, how'd he do? Was that close?
He did great. I mean, it is getting all the listings in the area on the site. And I agree. It's a core part of the market. For me, it's the foundation. It needs your website as an agent or brokerage or team has to have IDX and depending on what you choose, it provides 3 different things for you. It provides alerts because you can go and sign up your clients for things that are meeting their needs. There's retention because if you're not using, if you don't have an IDX or a home search, it's one thing just pulling the data, but if it's not in the modern tools that your buyers will actually use, they're going to go to Zillow. And then the only competitive thing I can tell you in real estate is a competitive agent will call your client. And so that kind of sucks. But then depending on how you market it and the solution, there's a huge chance for organic growth as well. I mean, we've got a guy named Kelly that owns Atlanta Townhomes in Atlanta. He outranks Zillow almost always in almost any Atlanta area, metro Atlanta area thing for a townhome related key phrase. That's huge.
Yeah. So before we get into some of the technical aspects, Kurt, I'd love to hear about your background, how you got involved with Showcase IDX, some of the entrepreneurship that you've done in the past that's kind of led you to where you are today.
net weaving and coffee. That's how I came here. I've been a business operator since I was 14. I started 2 legal entities then. One of them is still running today. I'm the guy that comes in and gets things done, but I have that bilingual ability to talk business and tech. And so I started very tech, and I got pulled probably 10 years ago into the marketing space and helped create 2 of the marketing channels we all use today. If you're posting anything, scheduling things on social media, it's social media management. I was an executive at one of those companies, one of the 2 big ones, ended up selling it to Oracle. We did the same thing later with influencer marketing. And I literally had a fraternity brother that I didn't know, but he had started Showcase back in the early 2000s and reached out to me and said, "Hey, I just sold this other prop tech company called Tourbuzz. I heard you talked to your wife and letting you take 18 months on sabbatical. That sounds like a difficult discussion. Can we have coffee and talk through that?" And literally that led to me kind of joining. I think it was maybe 5 days later.
Wow. Was that the end of the sabbatical?
I had actually ended my sabbatical about 12 months before then and been consulting. He didn't know. I just had the conversation with my wife where she's like, "I love the money, but you giving, like 10-hour notice that when my mom had advanced Alzheimer's, said when your mom comes to stay with us, you give me 10-hour notice because you're going to St. Louis for a consulting gig. The money's not that good."
Yeah. Especially when you have 2 little ones at home also. I think that we've talked to a lot of people that have great work-life balances on this podcast. They all work very hard and they build great businesses, but time is precious. As you get older, as I get older, I learn, that we do have a finite amount of time left on the planet. So you might as well, make the best use. Rory, what did you say that I stole the phrase? It was, the highest and best use of my time, right?
Yeah. So used to talking about that in terms of money or in the real estate space, is this property serving its highest and best use? But we had to turn that whole concept inward and talk about, is this the highest and best use of my time, my life, my energy, my happiness?
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I apply that from everything from marketing to business to personal life. I believe every day that there's 3 things I'm wrong about in my business and 3 things I'm wrong about in my personal life, and I don't know what they are. I just know that of historically, like how many times have you done something personal, spending your time or, work-wise, where you realize I've been wrong about this for like $1 million and 13 months. Thought you were right until that moment you realize you're Wile E. Coyote out over the ledge and you're like, crap, I'm really wrong. I find I do that with my time, with marketing and business, and it often takes somebody else pointing it out to me.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about how you mentioned something about, your fraternity brother said, how did you get your wife to allow you to take the sabbatical? Like, part of entrepreneurship is having that balance, right? And can you talk a little bit about, how you have your partner in life is integrated with these business decisions that you make? Like, are you guys in lockstep? Are you adversarial? Do you talk about this a lot? Like, give some advice for people who are listening to help them convince their spouses or partners that what they're doing is not crazy.
We're probably all of those things depending on the day or the hour, I just say. Everybody that's ever worked for me gets this. Literally, like when somebody comes to work for Showcase, I send them a shirt that says API. In technical terms, that means something else, but assume positive intent, because things can feel very adversarial. But I'm a big believer in pre-fighting, because there's no way to avoid conflict. I'd rather have it healthy and have it up front. And so best I can, I try having conversations with my wife on when can I work late if there are things that are coming up and we shift time around. Because then it's not like, hey, it's 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. and she's expecting me to come home or come upstairs. And I'm like, no, I got 2 more hours. Like, it's adversarial at that point if it's last minute. But I haven't always been that way. I mean, that's like the sabbatical came because I started an influencer marketing company that was doing quite well. And I'm literally turning around, I'm talking to one of my mentors, and one, it wasn't the best use of my time. I'm a scaler. I'm not the 0 to 1 guy. I realized I had not been spending valuable time early in my marriage with my wife. And I'm like, I can take time off and I want to spend time just with her. And so that ended up being a significant amount of time off until I was kind of forced off of the bench by an outside factor.
Right. I think that this is the why behind the what that we all do. It's not just looking to build a business just to build it. It's looking to build it to have, good means to provide for your family, have a good harmonious relationship at home, enjoy your children. I mean, what's it like to have a second child now? How has that changed your approach to business?
I mean, I'm not sure it's changed that too much for me, because I've shifted so much stuff in the past and over the last probably 11 to 12 years. Before then, I was the boss literally that would have walked into the office. And if one person on the team was crying, I thought I was a bad boss. But if everybody was crying, I dialed it to 11 and I need to dial it back to 9 or 10. And that was the hard driver. And it was literally this wake of, chaos behind me that I left in people's lives. And so when that was pointed out to me by a mentor, so many things shifted. My teams actually became more productive. I started shifting things in my personal life for that now too. And I'm very intentional. Like work and business are two different categories. Nobody in my team has to tell me what they're doing, but I am very clear in making sure I have discussions with them because they only do what they see modeled, but I'll have discussions with them that says if they have a partner, if that's important to them, as early as they can in the year, when are you taking vacations? Every quarter, I'm going to be asking like, hey, do you have time for your date nights? Do you have time off? Have you had discussions? I'm not forcing them to even tell me what those discussions are. I'm just wanting to bring to surface what that is. Part of that is because I do want people to not make the same mistakes. But so much of any time of coaching I give, whether it's for full-time employees or external, it's things that I'm telling myself. Because the best way for me to make sure I'm taking time with my wife is for me to talk to Tiffany on my team and ask, hey, do you have the time that you need? And it's usually things I'm saying to myself.
I'm going to interject into here also and say, think about what Kurt just said. If you're listening to this and you're saying, geez, I don't work in that kind of environment, get out. Go find an environment where they care about your time. I think it's really important to understand that. Even if you're in your 20s or 30s and looking to establish your career, there is a lot more than just like the having to deal with a bad work environment or bad people that you report into or who your peers are who don't see you as more than just a cog in the machine, just because there's so many other things you could be doing instead. I think the pandemic has really helped people understand how to go about doing that. Not just that they want to, but how they do it.
And whether you're an individual agent or you're running a team of 500, if things are going really well, hypergrowth, or they're going really bad, like you can move to a different environment, but it's up to you. In either of those two scenarios, you need to block that personal time up front because especially if things are going really well, it's addictive. So I've acquired a lot of companies and teams. So I remember I acquired this company called Games That Give. They did social media games back in the day. And these two young founders, after we acquired them, and cut them a nice 7-figure check. And my first meeting with them was, hey, when we talk in 2 days, you're going to show me your time blocks for personal time. And they didn't understand it because they were all like startup people. Mm-hmm. They really pushed back. And I said, I don't care what you do. All I'm saying is we're growing so fast. It's so fun. And you guys are so competitive. Every hour that you have that you're awake, you will end up wanting to come here at the expense of, both of them were married, at the expense of your wives and your kids if you don't block it out ahead of time. So pre decide. And like, it had never had a conversation because they were just like, I want to grow and win. I'm like, you're past that now. We've acquired you, but this is really exciting. We can make a, multi $100 million business for sale. You're going to want to show up. Netflix won't exist to you.
Yeah. I want to dig into, IDX and websites and some of the best practices that you can share with agents who are listening to this. But before we do that, I know Rory has a lot of questions about that as well, but you mentioned some influencer marketing where you've worked in that space in the past. I think it was a company that you said that you acquired or what have you. And I know that you mentioned a social media scheduling software. We don't have to say which one it is, but, I was just using one of them this morning, so perhaps it's the same one. Let's talk about influencer marketing today. What are just a couple high-level things that you can suggest to people that they can grow their influence online? Maybe it's something that has to do with their level of authenticity. We've talked a lot about, work-life balance in your family. I've always thought that introducing some of those elements into a social media presence is important because it humanizes people. But I'd love to get your take on, what are some, easy things that some influencers can do today?
I personally do interject my personal life in. Not everybody does, and that's completely okay. Whether you're a small influencer that only have 10 people that follow you, or you're Gary Vaynerchuk, like you're never going to see Gary Vaynerchuk's wife or kids on anything, and he's kind of open about that. He's like, he's the face. There is authenticity, but my biggest thing is people have to realize this, especially if you're an agent or anything in real estate. This is an influence economy. People are making this. There are places where, hey, a lot of times, hey, I actually need a real estate lawyer in Georgia for a topic right now. am I shopping that? No, I'm really just going to take the recommendation from my estate planning attorney, and I'll do a quick vet. But anything else in real estate, and even there, that's still influence economy. I'm vetting online. People are vetting you. The average consumer talks to 3 agents and looks them up before they choose who they're going to work with. That's not NAR stats, but that's the real stats. And so, like, why should I work with you versus somebody else? And that matters whether you're a plumber or electrician. The second thing is, don't overcomplicate this. I mean, I always say that, hey, TikTok is growing huge. And so you go out, you go listen to somebody, they're going to say, you should be doing this, or you should move to this platform. Well, that if you're not already on TikTok, then that's going to be a change of life for you. You're complicating things. Now, could that be a great avenue? Yes. But for me, like, it would complicate my marketing if I wanted to do something personally or for the company on TikTok, because I don't pull up the application. I have a profile, that's about all. Now, my wife, she's on it all the time. And so I think those two things of just realizing we're in the influence economy, and don't overcomplicate it. If you're on Instagram, stay there, dominate that before you decide to go anywhere else.
As we kind of shift over from that to, what you do on a daily basis, I want to stop and ask, tell us about Showcase IDX and an opportunity to explain how you stand out, in a world of IDX providers, what sets Showcase apart.
So we're the only really independent IDX. But more than that, we're also the only home search that research, not ours, but that shows that consumers choose over Zillow. That's fundamentally important. So you may get a lead, you may add them to a home search alert, but if it doesn't provide a search experience that the consumers will actually use, they're still going to go to Zillow. And we talked about what that looks like. Why people tend to come to us, though, is we're the only name really from an SEO organic perspective. Like, we have agents that get 50,000 organic visits from Google on a monthly basis, because it's not just our technology. You don't pay just $60 a month and, outrank Zillow, but it's our technology with that agent's knowledge that ends up being able to create a site that actually will outrank Zillow consistently. So that's why people come to us. We only do the engine. You go to an IDX broker, hey, they also sell you websites and they do other things. So partners don't like that. iHomeFinder, the same thing. Now there's all-in-ones like Real Geeks, Boomtown are great, but they're pretty expensive, and you can get a much better response by putting together best of breed. So the only thing we do, and the only thing we'll ever do, is that home search, that IDX.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, let me kind of spoon feed you the, or at least from the broker's perspective, some of the basic questions. Why does a brokerage need an IDX site? Can't they just put up a standard, pretty looking site and leave the home search to where people are actually searching through the MLS? Set up alerts in your MLS system, or just let the client search on Zillow. Why should a brokerage go make the investment in an IDX site?
Well, one, it's not much of an investment, especially at the brokerage level. I mean, to get even a pretty decent website, not even like a great website, you might be talking $3,000 to $5,000. That's a nothing investment to get it built. I mean, the IDX costs $60 to $100 a month. So, like, I only say that the entry cost is pretty low from a lot of the things that brokerages pay for. But I just look at it as, like, as an agent, do I want a competitive agent calling my client? And my answer is no. I mean, we're the only industry where, hey, if you don't have the right tools, a 90% in some cases, like IDX broker, iHomeFinder, some of the research has said 85 to 90% of people that actually get assigned to a site, either the agent adds them or they sign a LinkedIn form, will not use that site. So that means 90% of the time you have a competitive agent calling your client. Mm-hmm. Imagine trying to grow an electrician business. If you had 90% of the time you had a competitor calling you. So, like, for me, that's a really big deal. But then the second thing is, if they do it right, organic growth is the best way. When somebody types townhomes in Atlanta and, Kelly's website comes up, the gentleman I mentioned, well, that's free marketing. It takes a little time to invest, but it's like compound interest. And there's nothing that'll give you quality leads like that consistently over time.
Let me understand, how an IDX site works and how it doesn't actually work. So if you were to create an IDX site, what's to keep your clients using your site instead of using, the big search tools? We say Zillow, but there are some key, consumer search tools that people gravitate to. And the truth is, a lot of people use those websites. So what makes somebody come to your site and search on your site instead of going to one of these mass market searches?
You can use any of the SEO tools, marketing tools, and you can see where Google gets or Zillow gets their traffic. And the vast majority of their traffic does come from somebody going to Google or Bing and or DuckDuckGo and typing townhomes near Piedmont Park. And that's how they end up on Zillow. So now with that, hey, like for some of the research I mentioned, hey, Showcase does not have 100% retention. It's actually more like 96%, 94 to 96%, the report. And they've branded that as the Coca-Cola effect. Now, I don't know. I mean, there's always room to improve. It's not like we're the best. But to your point, hey, some consumers are just used to ordering a Coke, no matter what you have. And so they're used to going to Zillow. You're used to going to Amazon when you're going to buy something. And so there's always going to be that attrition. But I mean, it really though, why should somebody use yours? Well, if I'm using you as the agent, well, it's also up to you as the agent. Like I'm a firm believer of what agents miss a huge opportunity, both in their site and their marketing, is letting their consumers know what happens when they sign up on Zillow. My wife told me, this is a couple of years ago, I had to stop asking people at like barbecues and parties because it ended up being the whole conversation. Because I'm just testing, and I'm like, hey, Jason, do you know what happens? Like, do you know that Zillow makes $2 billion selling your contact information and your budget, like your financial information, to another agent? And you're like, hey, honey, come here. Did you know? And like quickly, that's the topic for 20 people. The thing where nobody realizes that. And I'm really of a firm belief that says, especially now, consumers care about privacy, but they don't realize it's not just the agent that gets the Zillow lead. It's title, lawyers, insurance companies. So I really believe, like, if I was an individual agent myself, I'd be pitching myself as kind of the fee-based financial advisor. I'm here to help you make the best transaction and protect your data, protect your family, which doesn't mean having 10 to 12 people getting sold your information because you're searching for a home. That's the free part. Use my website. That would be part of my pitch.
So, if I hear you right, the key attribute of having a good IDX site for your brokerage is that your clients will, stay on your site, stay in your ecosystem, not necessarily give their data out to other providers. Does a good IDX site also attract new clients, or is it just a good ecosystem to keep your current clients in?
Both, but it depends on the IDX site. So there are some, larger systems, not just that have an IDX, like a Sierra Interactive and or a Chime, that do a lot of other parts of that are good, are pretty good on from attracting as well. They're much more expensive. If you look at again, it's not what I say, it's what others like. The IDX broker, iHome Finder, they work on subdomains and iframes. Very technical terms. Basically, it says Google knows the data is not yours, doesn't belong in your site. So it's almost impossible to rank those. Our data works very different. So the example I like to give is Patrick Higgins, a Compass agent in Nashville. He's NashvilleHome.guru. Gave me the testimony everybody would want, everything. It has actual numbers. And so very little traffic, started working with us, and they invested some marketing time on content. And they now get more, from his testimonial, more than 50,000 organic visitors from Google every month. So now, I said, he's done the work. I lots of clients that come to us and they just slap the plugin on, they get a basic site. They don't get that type of Google growth from Google. But when you do the work, like the responses I see, I mean, it's literally generational changing wealth that comes just from the lead gen of an IDX site that's done properly.
So actually, let me just dig more into that. So if you have a good IDX site, it's built up properly, what are some good practices to start driving those new clients to the site? Is it a combination of having good SEO on your website, going out and doing, Google AdWords, social spending? What are some good practices to make use of the IDX investment and drive people to the site?
Great question. It depends on your budget. And I mean that not just in terms of your time, but your money. I believe in allocating your time. And so pay-per-click, I love in that it's fast. And so you get to see results pretty quickly. SEO is going to take usually 9 to maybe even 18 months before you start to see that ramp that comes up. And so when I mentioned like Patrick Higgins, when they started, it was just him and 4 agents on his team. They literally just wrote these community pages, sections of Nashville, Brentwood, condos in Brentwood, Tennessee. And they would just do a couple of those for each one of those agents. They did it every week. Well, at the end of the year, that number really adds up. Now they've been able to put that into a standard operating practice and hand that kind of content creation off. That takes time, but pay-per-click helps your results go faster. But I also love when you do that. If I was selling homes in Brentwood, Tennessee, in neighborhoods in Brentwood, Tennessee, and I was creating a Brentwood, Tennessee page with IDX data and my content and individual neighborhoods, that should be part of your actual marketing. So when you talk to a client that says, "Hey, they're looking at a neighborhood," part of your follow-up shouldn't just be, "Hey, thanks for the meeting." It should be follow-up with that written content that you probably already told them about, but that shows, "Hey, like I live in Bristol Oaks. Here's my write-up on Bristol Oaks. You might want to also look at Martin's Landing." And so that's how I would build that into my marketing. Now, if you happen to use Showcase, we also I would add them into a search, and we have a collaborative search where you invite not just one of the people, you invite them into a combined search. So they're instead of trading properties with text message and emails, they can all do that on your site, and you can see that information in comments and threads as well. So that kind of is part of how you suck them into the site as well.
One of the things I'm a big proponent of, and maybe I'm wrong, is just having a balanced approach to automation. So, not necessarily automating and therefore abdicating all your responsibilities, in sales as a real estate agent, but also making sure that you have a level of automation so you're not letting people fall through the cracks. What are some of the good best practices to follow up, using automation or not using automation with the leads that have come into your ecosystem?
Yeah, for me, it's first, usually has to be the slight manual part, but is the lead an active buyer or not? And I only say that is most agents don't grow their business because they're only focused on active buyers, people that are actively buying and selling today. When I can go look at CRMs for anybody, any successful agent or team, and I look at the average length of how long has somebody been in the CRM from the closed transactions, and it's almost consistently like 16 to 27 months. And so that means, hey, when you meet me, Rory, chances are I'm not going to do a transaction in the next 30 to 90 days. And so you need to be able to split your automations to, am I active or not? And then on the not wise, for me, it's how do I do that? So one of the things that I like to do that I'll tell you, almost no agents do this. And when they do, it changes their life, especially with past clients. So you go to somebody that you've closed the transaction with in 6 to 24 months. And so especially faster markets, people tend to be moving about every 5 years. Well, what happens is if there's two owners, two partners, one of them has started thinking about that beforehand. I went upstairs a couple of weeks ago now, and I saw my wife was out doing some searching. So it took me a little while to kind of ask. I'm like, are you actively thinking, or are you just going to think? No, because I happen to snoop over her shoulder. She's probably years away from thinking about let's actually have the conversation. She otherwise would be on a Zillow or something, thinking about working through that right now. So that's why you don't want to do more than 6 to 24 months. But somebody you close that transaction to, you have a curiosity factor. Yep. And it can 3x your referrals. I'll come back to you, Rory, and say, hey, can I set you up with just open house alerts for your neighborhood or your high rise? You want to see what people are upgrading, what they're doing? Well, it's good because you sell a curiosity, not, hey, do this. But what happens is that's the best way to get referrals, because when I see a home that I might want to recommend to my friend Jason, I just forward him that email, which if it comes from the MLS, just sends them back to the MLS. If it comes from my website or your website, Rory, it sends Jason back to your website.
Maybe I'm taking this question a little out of sequence, but one thing I see a lot of in our market here in Boston are other brokerages signing up people within the MLS system itself for alerts and everything. And on one hand, you're going straight to the source for it and all that's wonderful, but the branding and the opportunities aren't there. What opportunities are being lost by those brokerages that are just using the tools within the MLS system?
So from what I've seen, the referrals that they'd be getting, as opposed to setting up the same search on their website, they're getting no more than a third of the leads they would be getting. I have seen as much as a 10x increase from people moving from an MLS search to a well-branded, well-built IDX site, just in referral alone. Mm-hmm. That's a huge bit there. Now, what I can't quantify is, to your point about branding, I mentioned this is an influence economy. What's going to let you remember that, hey, I'm the agent and the local expert? If that email, if the branding doesn't say Kurt Uhlir, you're going to think it's First MLS or Stellar MLS or Sierra MLS, and maybe my name's going to be mentioned on there. Most of the MLS systems, not all of them, when I forward that email to my wife, she can't actually see the property unless I give her my password. So that's somewhat, I just can't quantify that branding bit. But I mean, this is the influence economy. Would you rather your clients know your name and be reminded of it every couple of weeks, or your MLS's name?
And then, you also brought up an interesting thing about some of these mass market searches like Zillow harvesting your data in ways that the consumers may not be aware. With their acquisition of things like Dotloop, should real estate agents also be wary of some of these tools? I mean, Dotloop's the one that comes to mind, but should brokerages be wary of using anything tied to those companies?
I personally don't think so. I mean, you also, Zillow with showing time and everything. Most of the companies do a very good job of firewalling information behind. They have to, from a privacy perspective, for personal information. But I mean, it's all, you could also make the same claim, for so many industries about Google. There's terms that say Google can basically do anything they want to improve their products. And that's a catch-all for, I can read your emails. Do they actually? Maybe, maybe not, probably not. So I'm much more of a big believer of the way that you win is operating. It's just like, hey, good ideas are easy to come up with. Who wins, like building a new company, building a new real estate team? It's the operators.
Before we get to our final questions, I want to hear a couple things that you think that agents can do immediately to improve their influence or their websites. Like what are 3 kind of quick action steps that they can take right after they get off, listening to this podcast?
If you don't have your own website, and by that I mean a URL that you own, not kurt.kw.com does not count as a website that you own. You need to put an intentional plan in place to make that happen, and it does not have to break the bank. I can't tell you how many agents had a 14-year-old daughter build their WordPress site. So like you can do this, but like a website that your broker gives you is not your website, because when you change brokerages, you lose the second most valuable asset that you could have in your business. So that's the first thing. And then it's really only the second thing for me is most agents do not have good bios that home buyers and sellers or investors care about. And you need a couple of different versions. You need a Twitter length version. You need a 2-minute version to when somebody says, "Who are you?" and you meet them at church or temple or out at a wine party. And then you need the version for your website that says, "Why should I work with you?" Like I just give that the best example is I have an agent here in town that sold us his house. He does not work with singles that do condos. He and 2 other agents, they own basically 2 churches, and they help married couples in their mid-20s to early 40s with young kids that pretty much go to these 2 churches. Like that's what they do. And my wife and I we were married and we're moving into that category, and like they refer out all other business, but that's who they do. And I know very clearly who to refer to him and who he can help the best and who he cannot. And that's what your bio should say.
I think it's important to focus in on a niche, just like you've suggested right there. You just mentioned refer out the other business. It could be a distraction. Like if you're working with somebody that just doesn't fit, a core competency, focus in on, 1 or 2 things and do them really well. That's kind of an immutable law of marketing that's been around for a long time. And, I'm glad that you were able to bring that up and underscore it. And your first point also, I want to tell a little story where I'm not a real estate agent myself, but I lost control of myname.com because of a stupid thing I did a couple of years ago where I had it tied to an old AOL account and wasn't getting the notifications that it was expiring. Didn't have it on auto renew. And then some squatter took it. And I'm like, you're gotta be kidding me. I mean, like I had nothing at myname.com, but like I wanted to own it at least. Well, I put a calendar reminder in, every year to check it on the date that it was supposed to get renewed. And sure enough, they renewed it a couple times. And I'm like, who are these people that are squatting jasonyouth.com? Who cares, right? I just randomly looked a couple days ago and it was back available. So I grabbed it. So I feel whole again. Like I feel like I own my identity once again, and maybe I'll build something out on it. And if I don't, at least I own it for 5 more years with auto renew. So if you're listening to this and you haven't done that already, go do it. Kurt, we could probably go on for a long, long time about digital marketing. And, I really appreciate some of your takes. Rory, you had some really insightful questions also about, why this is important to have on agent websites and just digital marketing in general. I mean, like Kurt, you've basically done it all, where you've bought and sold companies, you've advised people, and you've been involved with a lot of influencer marketing and some really technical marketing campaigns. So, we're grateful for all your time so far on this podcast, and we'd love to get your take on our final 3 questions that we ask of all our guests, and get to know you a little bit better. You ready?
Yep.
All right. Question number 1. If you can get on stage for 30 minutes and talk about any subject in the world with zero preparation, what would that be?
High achieving servant leadership, how it'll change your family life and your company's growth.
Yeah, that's a great answer. They're all tied together, aren't they?
Absolutely. And
that's 30 minutes without probably any preparation. I bet you can go 60 minutes about that.
I could go for, I've got probably 15,000 words written about it on my website. If you want the definitive guide to servant leadership,
Yeah,
I've got an article for you on there that covers it.
we'll make sure we link to that in the show notes. Second question we have for you. Tell us something that happened early on in your life or career that impacts the way that you're working today.
A mentor told me that I was an asshole, and I asked my mom about it, and she said, well, yeah, we all know that. And I'm like, and I was probably late 20s, and I'm like, why did nobody ever tell me that before? And she's like, you wouldn't have heard it before, but you asked. So yes, you are. And I didn't realize how I came across to others. And I actually was an asshole, but sometimes it is also just a perception that you don't realize how you show up to. But I was a very bad boss.
Yeah. Did you make some change as a result of finally it being brought to your attention?
Significant changes. And it was part of a lot of things going in my life, but yeah, my teams have been fundamentally different. But I was enough of a difficult, I made lots of people millionaires, and there's probably 11 to 12 of them that still will not take my phone call. I got in back to 6 or 7 that had been in that camp by sending them literally like small little like presents and cards to their house, being like, I just want to apologize. And so that was not the boss or life that anybody would want to have in their wake.
Well, Kurt, if there's any consolation, you did not come across that way in this interview. So we certainly don't. We feel like you've changed your ways, and maybe servant leadership helped with that.
I hope it has.
I hope so. Finally, tell us something that you're listening to, watching, or reading these days.
I am re-listening to Atomic Habits. So my team opened up to my team again, and so I tend to go through that and Deep Work by Cal Newport on audiobook, usually once a year or so while I'm in the car.
Rory, is that in our queue?
It will be.
It will be. Great. Kurt, tell everyone where people can find you if they want to reach out and learn more about you or Showcase IDX or anything else that we've talked about today.
Well, if you need an IDX or somebody to build your site, we can recommend those people to go to showcaseidx.com. As far as me, kurtuhlir.com, that's the best place. I practice what I preach. It's the hub that'll point you to almost anything else.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we will link that up in the show notes so people could easily click over to your website and to Showcase IDX and your social media accounts as well, which is how we learned about, your beautiful young daughter and your son. Rory, tell us where people can find you.
You can find me at my real estate brokerage, Next Home Titletown. That's nexthometitletown.com, or you can also do an IDX search for the states of Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Or you can check me out at my law practice, Urban Village Legal, urbanvillagelegal.com.
Yeah. And with your IDX sites, a lot of individual listings pop up very high in search rankings with Next Home Titletown or nexthometitletowrealestate.com/the listing. So we certainly see the value of having IDX websites and some high ranking pages. We look at Google Analytics and boy, a lot of that traffic is individual pages, individual listings. So Kurt, you're headed up to the mountains, huh?
I am. We'll be leaving actually in just a few minutes.
Awesome. All right. Well, enjoy your time there. And, thank you for being part of the Real Estate Law Podcast. Really appreciate your joining us as a guest today. And thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this, please give us a great review, because we love great reviews, or shoot us a comment, or you can shoot me an email directly, jason@nexthometitletown.com. On behalf of Kurt and Rory, thank you so much, both of you, for being part of this podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
This has been the Real Estate Law Podcast. Because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. We're powered by Next Home Titletown, Greater Boston's progressive real estate brokerage. More at nexthometitletown.com and Urban Village. Village Legal, Massachusetts Real Estate Counsel, serving savvy property owners, lenders, and investors. More at urbanvillagelegal.com. Today's conversation was not legal advice, but we hope you found it entertaining and informative. Discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com. Thank you for listening.